All right, so there's a couple things going on here with Bitcoin. First of all, we have this descending channel right here, or a descending wedge, if you want to call it that. You can see that the upper trend line has only had 2 tests of it, so really this needs 3 to become valid. We can see here that the lower trend line is valid with 3 touches so far. So very soon we could see a pump out of here all the way up to, say, this trend line or this previous zone of resistance before we have another rejection. Now, if we do have another rejection, it could bring us down to the 200 weekly moving average, which is sitting around this red line here. But as time goes on, the 200 weekly moving average is going to get closer and closer to the price. So if we do something like this, the 200 weekly moving average could be all the way up within this box at that point, or at least at this previous low here. So that way, when we do come back down, we could have somewhat of a double bottom before we move out of here. It's also worth a mention that patterns like this are typically bullish. Descending wedges or descending channels like this, usually they have a bullish breakout. Now, this doesn't mean that we can't break out to the downside. You can see we did have somewhat of a fake out here, but as a general rule of thumb, these are bullish. Alright, so I've removed those trend lines just to keep the chart a little bit cleaner for now. If we take a fib retracement from this bottom to this top here, you can see we had pretty much a perfect test of the 1618, as well as getting sucked back up within this green box of support. So as of right now, it is holding. The only thing I'm really concerned about is that we have been testing this area quite a bit. You can see that we've had a bunch of closes in this green box over here, whereas back here is mainly wicks before we had a move out of here. So if we do have a move out of here, which is likely in my opinion, I don't expect it to be as substantial as this. I think we'll more than likely see another rejection here before we finally find a bottom. Taking a look at the EMA ribbon and the Ichimoku cloud on the daily, you can see we've been interacting with the EMA ribbon a little bit throughout this move to the downside. Rarely ever, and especially trending moves, do we ever break this to the upside the first time. So usually on a downtrend, we'll rarely ever break the EMA ribbon to the upside on the first test, and usually in an uptrend, we will never break the EMA ribbon on the first test to the upside. The Ichimoku cloud is starting to get wider ahead of us, so really Bitcoin needs to make a decision relatively soon and break this Ichimoku cloud to the upside and use it as support if we want to see somewhat of a bottom forming here. If not, we'll probably see something like this, maybe a move to the top of the Ichimoku cloud before finding a rejection, or even all the way up at this red uptrending level of resistance, which is also sitting around where that downtrending level of resistance on the wedge is. Drop down on the smaller time frames, such as the 4-hourly, you can see we've been pretty much trading sideways in a consolidation pattern for quite some time here. We have broken the EMA ribbon to the upside, which is a good sign, as well as the Ichimoku cloud. You can see that we have been testing the 200 EMA quite a bit throughout this range here as well as here. So really, in my opinion, we're probably going to see some volatility return to the market here relatively soon. Now, whether that volatility kind of slowly stair-step us up or down, we'll just have to see. But I think this sideways trading range that we've been in for quite some time here is about to end. I'm not going to talk too much on the hourly because it's pretty much just an extended version of the 4-hourly chart. Just a consolidation move for the most part. Taking a look at the crypto fear and greed index, we're still in extreme fear, and we have been for quite some time now. If you look back here, we've pretty much been in the low teens since the beginning of May. Generally, when we're in the extreme fear territory on the fear and greed index for this period of time, we do have somewhat of a relief rally. Now, whether that relief rally sends us up a little bit higher and then we go lower, we'll just have to find out. But you can see throughout the history here, when we do stay down here for quite some time, we do have somewhat of a relief. For example, back here, we weren't even as low as we are now. We had a relief rally, and then we had another dump. We go to the weekly chart and check out the 200 moving average. You can see that it is sitting around this red line here. I have moved this red line up to where the 200 EMA is sitting currently. Before, my previous video was around here, but as time goes on, this is going to start catching up with the price action. So again, if we do see something like this, where we have a small pump to the upside and come back down, the 200 moving average could be somewhere, say, around here, and we could have somewhat of a double bottom pattern before we start moving back up again. So to sum things up here, I'm really not happy that we've had a bunch of closes around this green box of support here. The more often we close down here or even below it, the more likely we are going to break it to the downside and start using it as resistance. But considering that the fear and greed index has been in extreme fear for quite some time here, and the last time that we have tested this green box of support, we've had pretty substantial moves to the upside. I'm expecting at least somewhat of a bounce here. You could maybe call this a bounce, but I wouldn't really consider that enough, especially considering how big of moves we've had back here when we've tested it. So again, we could very well find a move, say all the way up to 40k before we find another dump. So if we do find support here, I'm pretty much looking at the 40k region for potential rejection. If we can't manage to hold this level to the upside, we'll likely do something like this, where we have somewhat of a bear flag and then trend lower, possibly all the way down to the 200 weekly moving average, which is sitting around $22,000. And ultimately, we will have to see if this trend line gets a third touch of it. again, we could do something like this, as I mentioned, and move all the way up to this trend line or this uptrending level of resistance, and then find another move down, potentially for a double bottom before we shoot out of here. This is all I have for Bitcoin today. If you haven't subscribed already, go and do so. If you'd like to join Discord, it'll be posted in the link in the description below. As always, this is not financial advice, and I'll see you in the next one.